Days after Prime Minister Justin Trudeau accused Indian agents of orchestrating the murder of a Canadian Sikh leader, there are lingering questions about how far the geopolitical and economic fallout between the two countries and their allies might spread. Trudeau yesterday acknowledged that the country is of growing importance to the West, but also said that Canada needs to stand up for itself. Here's a snapshot of what he said.
We call upon the government of India to work with us, to take seriously these allegations and to allow justice to follow its course.
Joining us to discuss, Gerry Butts, former Principal Secretary to the Prime Minister of Canada and Vice Chair at Eurasia Group. Gerry, thanks so much for being with us. And before we get to the economic implications, I'd love to get your perspective as somebody who's in the inner circle of the Prime Minister's office. I mean, the way this came out, how it came about, it's been characterized as something that Trudeau had really no other option but to come right out and say it, because quieter diplomatic efforts didn't seem to yield anything.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here, Amber, and I think that's precisely the point. Subsequent reporting that's come out in the last couple of days have detailed the measures that the government took before taking this extraordinary step of going public with these accusations. The National Security and Intelligence Advisor to the Prime Minister, apparently, according to reports, had traveled herself to India with mission in August to try and avoid this scenario, frankly. And it looks like all other options were exhausted and they had to go public with the intelligence that they have.
It seems ironic that a country with so many people from India would now be at odds with India. Talk about the dynamics, though, within the sort of Indian political base in this country.
Yeah, it's a really important point, Amber. And of course, people who have been following this issue for many years know that it has a very long history dating back to the tragic events of the Air India bombing. And even before that, the sectarian violence in India against the Sikh community. Canada has the largest Sikh diaspora of any country in the world outside of India. And the politics of that community have been, it's ebbed and flowed over the years, and how antagonistic it's been to the home country, but it's usually reflective of events that are happening within India. So it's a volatile situation, and it has been for a while. But I also think that that's kind of beside the point, that regardless of whether this is whatever country we're talking about here, no democracy worth its name can abide by a foreign government allegedly assassinating one of its own citizens in its own country. And I think while there's some sex appeal to delving into the domestic politics of this, the principle that the government is trying to uphold is a really important one that any government in any democratic country would.
Is this an international problem that the U.S. perhaps hasn't stepped up in a more significant way to be supportive to Canada?
Oh, I think the U.S. has stepped up pretty decisively. And if you look at what the American National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, said yesterday, he wanted to put to rest any insinuation that there was a rift between Canada and the United States here. I think these things all have their own they have to be orchestrated in a certain way that I think the government is relatively satisfied that all of their allies are playing the appropriate role at the time, at the moment we find ourselves in the development of this issue. And as time goes by, they will play whatever role is required of them.
When we look at the economic fallout, it's viewed generally as not one that is present danger in terms of relations, but a future opportunity lost. How do you think about that?
Well, I hope that we can set aside the economic opportunities over the long run, but in the short term, there's obviously going to be significant friction in the relationship. I think the last figures that were published, Canada exports about $3 billion in goods and services to India. That's not nothing, but it's also about what crosses the Ambassador Bridge every 10 days. So I think it's important to put this in perspective. More importantly, Canadian investors have been investing in India as an alternative anchor to China in the Asian economic theater. So that's a really important point for the future. And geopolitically, the paramount issue is, of course, the United States and its allies are trying to establish an alternative pole of influence in Asia other than China. So the timing couldn't be worse for this from a geopolitical perspective. But at the end of the day, allies, especially NATO allies, G7 allies, democratic allies, have to stand together on a point of principle like this.